Today is MX3 day. I forgot to bring my microphone, so I'm gonna have to be behind the camera doing the talking because it's pretty loud out here. Out at CCU, I think this is hole 7. You can see the gentleman in the blue shirt walking there. He's basically playing to the basket that I'm gonna be throwing to. And I brought out a whole bunch of MX3s. I have a couple 400 glimmers, a couple 350 Gs, a couple 400s to kind of get the flight comparisons and see. Most of them are relatively new. They have, you know, a couple of rounds on them maybe. And then for comparison, I brought out a few of my gems. Brought out a 400S PA2 that's pretty beat in. I brought out a brand new 400 H1V2 Cameron Cold Glacier Signature Edition that I had to get because my other one decided to go swimming. And then also for comparison, a relatively new 300 A2 and then a very, very, very beat in 300 A2. So let me get the film of throwing those, and then I'll get into the MX3s and show you what kind of flights you can expect out of those. Alright, that was the 400 PA2. Here is the very, very beat in 300 A2. And just for reference sake, the basket off in the distance that I'm playing toward, I lasered it at 95 yards. A pretty new 300 A2. That's getting out there with the big turnover somewhere probably in the ballpark of about 260. Now, for the pieces that we came for. First off, a gently used 176 350G MX3. That is probably around 290. It's pretty close to the basket. Here, brand new, never thrown, 170 350G MX3. Again, probably within 10 feet of the basket. What you could see with the first one is that it had some glide. It wanted to move a little bit to the right because it's beat in a little bit. But the second one being brand new, it's the first time I've ever thrown it. That one didn't really have any glide at all, or not a whole lot of glide. 400 MX3, 180. That's pretty much right on the 300 mark. Went dead straight. Another 400 MX3. This one is extremely chalky, and also 180. My foot slipped a little on that one, so I pulled it over just a bit, but it's still about 300 feet, basically straight. 178, 400 Glimmer MX3. again somewhere around the 300 mark. Turned over, held the line, and never come back. All right, last one, Glimmer 400 MX3. Again, just over 300, pretty much dead straight. I put it on a little bit of hyzer, it flipped up, and just flew straight. Let's go see. All right, I'm down here at the other end, and here's something that I found interesting. If you look, the A2 is right there, and it's very beat in, so it's very glidey. You can tell I got a little helping wind. The 350G MX3s, basically within 15 feet of the basket, so they're probably out here about 280. The others, you can probably see, the 400s, the two Glimmers. The Glimmers, you would think, would be more stable, but they weren't. They were actually less stable. More glide, less stable. Now granted, they're both more used than the others. So I'm gonna grab them and I'm gonna throw them back toward the tee. And most people don't throw their mids full blast, full speed. So I'm gonna try to shape the shots through the gapway here of trees and try to make them land as close to that little mulch tee pad off in the distance as possible. All right, I'm gonna shoot the gap. Try to go through the middle with a relatively straight shot right towards that mulch tee pad off in the distance, which is again about 295 from here. Start out 170 350G MX3 to be its second flight ever. All right, you can see this time I'm throwing into the wind, so I'm not going to get that help. Plus, that was a bit nose up. I started it on a teeny bit of ante, and it just fought right out. 176 350G MX3. That's a lot of letters and numbers. Don't know if you saw that or not. Started it on a pretty big ante. It stayed on that ante and just held it the entire way, probably about 250, 260. I have a right to left wind that's kind of helping the hyzer but hurting, knocking down the anhyzer. Very chalky, 400 MX3. I'd say maybe 10 rounds. Again, it's longer than the other one, but you can see when it gets up into the wind, that right to left wind just kind of pushes it left. Plus, it wasn't a great shot either. 400 MX3. That's what I was trying to avoid. That's why I was trying to throw the big anhyzer with a straight shot that turns right. All right, let's keep going. 400 Glimmer MX3. This one is from the 2019 Am Worlds. One of the best shots I've had today, and it's laying right in front of the tee pad. A little bit of turn, kind of held it, and then just basically dropped straight down. Last one, 2019 Pro Worlds 400 Glimmer MX3. It is basically sitting right on top of the other one over there. It started its turnover and just held it the entire way. We're into a pretty decent headwind coming at us right now. Just for comparison, 300 A2, very beat up. It's going to be sitting over there on top of one of the other 400 MX3s. All right, final thoughts. Like I said, I didn't bring my mic today, so final thoughts. Number one, it's hot and I'm beginning to sweat. The 350G PA3 or 350G MX3s, very stiff, very hard plastic, great feel, great hand feel. They fly great, they fly true. They are more overstable. Even the lightweight 171 was more overstable. They're relatively flat, so that could be it. But basically the stiff plastic, they're pretty overstable into the wind and with the wind. Especially going into the wind, surprised me. I expected them to flip up and fly flat. They didn't, they still wanted to hyzer out. I put this 171 on a little bit of a hyzer, threw it, and it held the hyzer the entire way. I put this 176 one, I threw it flat pretty hard, and it never wanted to tip over, it just wanted to glide straight into the wind. The 400 ones, basically the same thing. They're like a softer version of the 350. They fly basically the same. I love the MX3 for when I throw it hard, even into a wind, I can throw it really hard, really snap into it hard, and I don't worry about the disc flipping over. If I put it on ante, it'll hold the ante the entire way. If I put it on a little bit of hyzer, it'll hold the hyzer the whole way. If I throw it hard and flat, and I mean hard, then it'll just hold that. It won't try to tip over or anything crazy like that. The 400 ones are not as stable as the 350Gs. They're basically relatively flat. They don't have a ton of glide, but they have a decent amount of glide. The glimmers are the in-betweens. They are the better ones. If you put them on a little bit of a hyzer, and like I say, I bagged this one. If you put them on a little bit of a hyzer, they'll hold that hyzer and finish with a little bit more hyzer. If you put them on anhyzer, throw them up, they'll hold that anhyzer, hold it, and right before they get to the ground, they'll flatten out so you don't get those weird cut rolls. They feel as good and as soft as the 400 plastic. They kind of fly like a little beat-in version of the 350. Again, I can throw this bad boy hard. I mean, hard as I can, snap really hard, flat into a wind, and it won't tip over. That's why I prefer the glimmers. I bagged this one. It is the only mid-range that I have. I have a beat-in A2 for overstable, but I know with this one I can throw it flat, I can throw it on a little hyzer, I can throw it on a little anhyzer, and I trust it.